Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be making this birthday card using an emboss resist technique with some embossing powder and some distressed ink blended background. So I'm using this piece of 110-pound cardstock from Recollections that I get from Michaels. I really like this cardstock. It's nice and heavy duty, good quality for card bases and card panels, and it really doesn't warp that much. And I just get it from my local Michaels here in town. And I also use my EK Success powder tool just to rub some powder all across the back of the cardstock. What that does is it prevents the embossing powder that you're going to pour on your card base, rather card panel, from sticking to any areas that you don't want it to, and the embossing powder will only stick to where you place your stamped image. I'm just using my Misty here, my Most Incredible stamping tool. If you're not familiar, it's a stamping tool that helps stamp your images really in precise placement, and if you need to restamp it again, you can get it in the exact same position over and over. I'm inking up my stamp here. It's from Close to My Heart stamp set. It's like a background corner stamp image with lots of detail, and I'm stamping it with Versamark ink, and I'm pouring some Wow opaque bright white embossing powder over top of that image, and it's going to stick to that Versamark ink. And I'm heating up my heat tool here nice and hot, and it's going to be melting that embossing powder. I just love the look of embossing powder when it's heated. It's like magic. You want to make sure your heat gun is nice and hot so it doesn't warp your paper. I just fan my paper just to cool it down a little bit, and I'm going to rotate my paper by 180 degrees. And because I'm using my Misty and I'm using the grid lines on the Misty and putting it in the same place, just rotated, I'm going to get that stamped image in the exact same spot as the other side, just mirror imaged across on a diagonal. And I'm inking it up with my Versamark ink again, and I'll stamp that with swinging the door of my Misty, pushing down nice and firmly to get a nice crisp image. And you're going to get a nice perfect mirror image of that same stamped image. And I'm using that same embossing powder. I'll pick it up and pour it on. I like to use a coffee filter to pick up my embossing powder, or to pour my embossing powder on. It just helps keep it from getting all over my work area, and I can easily use that coffee filter to pour back into my container. I'm going to be doing a distress ink background with some Blueprint Sketch distress ink and Wilted Violet. I'm starting off with the Blueprint Sketch and my distress ink embossing tool, and I'm just sponging on some ink going from the corner out, kind of on a diagonal. And I'm just kind of blending it out, trying to get a nice blended background. And you'll see I end up adding a little bit of black, which I started off by hating, and I almost got rid of this card panel because I did not like it at all, but I ended up making it work. I'll just replace my blending sponge there and wipe off my surface with a baby wipe. That just helps pick up some extra ink that's on my work surface. And now I'm using the Wilted Violet on the other side, and I'm going to try and get like a nice ombre between the purple and the blue and have it fade in the middle. And I'm just inking that there. And you'll see I have a little orange post-it note on my fingers of my right hand, and I actually use that to prevent ink smudges from your fingertips getting onto your panel. And I got that idea from Christina Werner. She's an awesome card maker. If you haven't checked her out, please check her out. She's got amazing tutorials and cards that she does here on YouTube. So this is where I add that black soot, and at first I absolutely hated it. I thought I was losing all of that beautiful Blueprint Sketch that I put on, as well as that Wilted Violet, and I thought, oh no, I've destroyed this and I need to start over. But I decided, well, let's keep going and see if I can make this work. So I go back in with my Wilted Violet and I try to smooth out that black as best as I can and have it be a little bit more blended. And then I go back in with the Blueprint Sketch and blend in that black as well. You can see some of that embossing, the emboss resist background stamped image has some of that black on it. Don't worry, because I end up taking a baby wipe and wiping it off, and it picks up that extra ink that's sitting on top of that embossed background. So I'm using that baby wipe like I said, and I'll just take that and wipe it off, and you can see it cleans off that white background really nicely. And then I thought, you know, this distressed ink, when wet, does react and tends to pick up some of the color when you dab water on it. So I took that baby wipe and I just wanted to dab it on that color just to soften it a little bit, which I ended up really liking, and didn't mind how it turned out. So this is where I decided to change my background panel. I was going to use a gray card base, but I didn't really like the look of it, so I decided to change it to a black cardstock card base. And this is cut to 4 1/4 by 11, scored and folded at 5 1/2. to make a side fold A2 size card base. And you can see I like that much better. So I'm using my adhesive runner, dot runner adhesive, and I'm applying that all to the back of the card panel, and I'll place it on the front of my card base, making sure I can get it as straight as I can, and I'll push that down to make that adhesive adhere really well. And then I'm going to grab this sentiment stamp set from Hero Arts. It's called Many Birthday Messages, and I decided to use the sentiment that says Happy and Wonderful Birthday Wishes. And I'm going to be stamping it on some black cardstock, the same cardstock that I used for the card base. And I'm just trimming it down to about 2 3/4 so I can get a good width of my paper to make that stamp image fit across. And I'm going to use my MISTI again here. You don't have to use a MISTI if you don't have one. You can use an acrylic block or whatever you use to stamp your images. I just really like to use the MISTI because it helps me get perfect placement each time, especially if I need to re-stamp if I don't get a good image the first time. So I'm using that same Versamark ink, and I use that EK6S powder tool to pour rub powder all over that cardstock so the embossing powder only sticks to the stamped image. And you did see I had to stamp it twice to get a nice crisp image there. And I'm going to be using my WOW, again, opaque bright white embossing powder, the same powder I used before, and I'll pour that all over my sentiment. And I'm just flicking off the excess. If you do get a little bit of powder where you don't want it, you can always use your finger or a brush, like a paintbrush, to rub off the excess powder. Again, I'm using my heat tool here. I'm going to heat up my sentiment, get it nice and hot, and just melt that powder. You want to keep it kind of moving, and you don't want to hold it on the paper too long because that's what can cause your paper to warp. And I just like to fan my paper just to make sure that I get it nice and cool. You can see a little bit of ghosting on my black paper from that EK6S powder tool. No worries, I just take my hand or a dry baby wipe and just rub that off, and it takes that ghosted effect right off. I'm trimming down my paper just a little bit to fit that sentiment a little bit better. And I'm going to be adhering this onto my card panel with some foam dots. Now I use these foam dots that I get from Michaels. They are Studio G adhesive foam dots. And I actually use the packaging that the foam dots come on as foam dots as well, because it has the same adhesive as the foam dots themselves. You can remove the backing paper and you can use that and cut it down so you're not wasting any of that packaging. So that's a good tip that I have if you happen to use these foam dots. So I'm just putting my my sentiment piece just in the middle there, trying to get it as centered as best as I can, and I use the grid lines on my mat to help me get that lined up as the best way I can. I'm going to be adding some bling here, some sequins. I'm just showing you how I store my sequins. I get my sequins from the dollar store. I find they're the exact same quality as ones that you can get from Simon Says Stamp. And they're really inexpensive. You can get about 3 or 4 colors in a pack for just over $1. I'm just picking a few colors here, a silver, a purple, and a blue. And I store my sequins in these bead containers that I actually got from Michaels a while back, maybe a year ago. And they were actually on clearance, so I don't know if you can find them anywhere anymore. But what I liked about these containers is that the lids actually screw on. They're not just clipped on. So if you accidentally drop the container, it's less likely to pop open and have your sequins pour everywhere, which I really like because I am quite clumsy. And I'm just using my Silhouette pickup tool here and to pick up my sequins and place them in the places that I want to put them. What this has is like a sticky tack, you know, that stuff that you use to put pictures on your walls. It has sticky tack inside of the tip, and you just lightly turn the tip and a little bit comes out, and it's just tacky enough to pick up the sequins or beads or whatever you want to adhere to your project without really sticking too much that it's hard to get off. And it really helps in trying to figure out where you want to place your embellishments. So I'm just putting them all over the card, the purple, the blue, and the silver sequins in different places around the card. And once I figure out where I want to put them all, I'll use that same pick-me-up tool and my Ranger Multimedia mat to adhere the sequins down. I'm just squirting it out, making sure I can get the glue to come out. And I just pick up the sequin with my tool and then put glue underneath, and that's how I get them placed where I want. This glue is very, very, very strong, and it helps adhere the sequins very, very well. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and any ideas and suggestions on cards that you'd like to see, please hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.